Good morning. Good Saturday morning. Those of you from Discord, come on over and join me. We were having a good discussion this morning. My snapshot that I just took, is crazy me. And those of you that have been with me for a long time, oh, God bless you, neighbors, know that I have some crazy side to me. So it is a nice fall, cool day. That's Louisiana. I was complaining the other day about how hot and muggy it is. Today it's overcast and cool. Feels great. I've been on the porch since about 7:30. It's 10:45 here now. Like I said, I've been having some great chat on Discord. And I'm going to throw out some concepts that I'm thinking of that I want you guys to weigh in as far as learning to read and reading in a second language. So stay tuned for that at the end. We are on chapter 15, Roman numeral XV, and page 65. So thanks for joining me. Let's read. Mr. Collins, remember we just met him, and on my Discord I asked the question, what do you think about him? So if you're commenting or following along live, what do you think about Mr. Collins so far? And is he going to be a major character? Tell me your thoughts. That's an important part, and that's part of why I never remember names. If you don't really stop and take in and engage with the characters as they're introduced, especially when they're not major characters, then they usually typically get woven back in later, and you're like, now who was that person? Collins isn't going to be that minor of a part, but he's not a major character. So make some notes in your mind or annotate in your book. What do you think about Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins was not a sensible man, and the deficiency of nature had been but little assisted by education or society. The greatest part of his life having been spent under the guidance of an illiterate and miserly father, and though he belonged to one of the universities, he had merely kept the necessary terms without forming at it any useful acquaintance. Now, I'm going to say what illiterate is because I'm embarrassed to admit I didn't know the meaning of that word until I was very old. College age old. Illiterate, to not have literacy, to not literature, to not be able to be well read. In some cases, it means not to be well educated, but typically to be illiterate means you don't have the ability to read and write. The subjection in which his father had brought him up had given him originally great humility of manner, but it was now a good deal counteracted by the self-conceit of a weak head, like a way to say he's kind of stupid, living in retirement, and the consequential feelings of early and unexpected prosperity. Vijaya Varadaraj. Oh, hi. Hello, Siddharth. Hello again. I enjoyed our chat this morning on Discord. Drop the link because I think we've got some good conversations ahead. A fortunate chance had recommended him to Lady Catherine de Bourgh when the living of Hunsford was vacant, and the respect which he felt for her high rank and his veneration for her as his patroness, mingling with a very good opinion of himself, of his authority as a clergyman, and his rights as a rector, made him altogether a mixture of pride and obsequiousness. Obsequiousness. I can't say that word. Obsequiousness. Self-importance and humility. There's a website you can go to how to pronounce, or if you look at a dictionary. Let's see, because it makes me crazy when I can't pronounce something. Y'all are so lucky to have these tools. When I was in, your age, we had to look up things in dictionaries. Obsequiousness, obedient or attentive to an excessive or servile, like a suck up is what we would call it now. Like you are so, yes ma'am, yes sir, whatever you want, let me get it for you, right? So we have a very complete description of Mr. Collins. Does it make you like him more or less? Was your original take on him about right? Having now a good house and very sufficient income, he intended to marry, and in seeking a reconciliation with the Longbourn family, he had a wife in view, as he meant to choose one of the daughters if he found them as handsome and amiable as they were represented by common report. This was his plan of amends, of atonement for inheriting their father's estate, and he thought it an excellent one, full of eligibility and suitableness, and excessively generous and disinterested on his own part. His plan did not vary on seeing them. Miss Bennet's lovely face confirmed his views and established all his strictest notions of what was due to seniority, and for the first evening she was his settled choice. The next morning, however, made an alteration, for in a quarter of an hour's tete-a-tete with Mrs. Bennet before breakfast, a conversation beginning with his parsonage house, and leading naturally to the avowal of his hopes that a mistress, for it might be found at Longbourn, produced from her, amid very complacent smiles and general encouragement, a caution against the very Jane he had fixed upon. So everybody likes Jane. Jane is beautiful and sweet and all the good things. Sorry, my son is calling me, so I need to text him real quick. On YouTube, can I call in 30? You know, when your kids call you, you stop everything, right? Do you expect to hear, if you call your mom, don't you expect to hear back from her? Siddharth, I don't know. Oh, no, it's a shorter chapter. So everybody loves Jane. As to her younger daughters, she could not take upon her to say. She could not positively answer, but she did not know of any prepossession. Her eldest daughter, she must just mention, she felt it incumbent on her to hint, was like to be very soon engaged. Hi, Manoj, from Nepal. You've been here before? Because I always remember Nepal. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. Mr. Collins had only to change from Jane to Elizabeth, and it was soon done while Mrs. Bennet was stirring the fire. Elizabeth, equally next to Jane in birth and beauty, succeeded her, of course. So he's not that connected to Jane. He just thought she was pretty. So when Mrs. Bennet kind of redirected him, because she wants to believe that Jane's going to marry well with Mr. Bingley. So she kind of redirects Mr. Collins' interest to Elizabeth. And he's okay. So he's like, he's shopping. It's not true love. It's not, some real connection. It's just, yeah, she's next in line. She's cute. Okay, I'll take her. I said, what makes you think it's getting better? What do you like better about it? Are you getting more used to the language? Because sometimes I think that's it. It takes a while to get into the rhythm of how they speak. Mrs. Bennet treasured up the hint and trusted that she might soon have 2 daughters married, and the man whom she could not bear to speak of the day before was now high in her good graces. So she now likes Mr. Collins. Lydia's intention of walking to Meryton was not forgotten. Every sister except Mary agreed to go with her, and Mr. Collins was to attend them at the request of Mr. Bennet, who was most anxious to get rid of him. Mr. Bennet doesn't like him. Mr. Collins is interesting to me. He is interesting, and I love the back of this book. The quote on it is, Jane Austen remains the most misunderstood of great English writers. Austen's an extended, exploratory, dangerously subversive art, and is neither harmlessly decorative nor picturesquely provincial. Irony is the secret of the perfect self-sufficiency of Pride and Prejudice. He really represents a lot of what Jane Austen sees as society of the day and really dislikes. Like, she wants to portray him honestly as he is and how society sees him as respectable and good, but to help us, the reader, see him as despicable and distasteful and self-serving. Madeline, hi. Siddharth is my host. I've given him host position. I don't know if you guys can see the little key or whatever on it. And he's my salesman to get us to Discord. So when we read Jane Austen, it's not this simple story of romance. She really is talking about um, societal structures and if they're helpful or not, and if they support women or not. And but she does it so subtly that she was beloved as an author. Unless it's been a while since you've been online, you're right, or at least I since I've talked to you, Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins, yeah, Mr. Bennet's glad to be getting rid of him. Talking to Mr. Bennet with little cessation of his house and garden at Hunsford. Such doings discomposed Mr. Bennet exceedingly. In his library, he had been always sure of leisure and tranquillity, and though prepared, as he told Elizabeth, to meet with folly and conceit in every other room in the house, he was used to be free from them there. His civility, therefore, was most prompt in inviting Mr. Collins to join his daughters in their walk. And Mr. Collins, being in fact much better fitted for a walker than a reader, was extremely well pleased to close his large book and go. In pompous nothings on his side, and civil assents on that of his cousins, their time passed till they entered Meryton. I'm glad to hear that, Unless. That's my hope. And I'm going to be at the end talking to my English second language students about really great tools you can use to improve your English, especially if you're trying to do spoken English. Hey, Venus, you going to work? Oh, I hate when you're not in a good mood, but come see us at Discord some and chat with us. Because maybe when you're at work, probably not, but hopefully when you're at work, you can chat a little bit. And we'd love to help improve your mood. So they get to Meryton, and I lose my place. Well, where did it go? There, there. Oh, there. The attention of the younger ones was then no longer to be gained by him. Their eyes were immediately wandering up in the street in quest of the officers, and nothing less than a very smart bonnet indeed, or a really new muslin in a shop window could recall them. So other than seeing cute clothes in the shops windows, the younger girls were just enthralled with these handsome soldiers, the military. So Mr. Bennet knows he doesn't really have a shot with them. Um, but the attention of every lady was soon caught by a young man whom they had never seen before, of most gentlemanlike appearance, walking with an officer on the other side of the way. Okay, heads up, this is going to be an important character. The officer was the very Mr. Denny concerning whose return from London Lydia came to inquire, and he bowed as they passed. All were struck with the stranger's air. All wondered who he could be, and Kitty and Lydia, determined if possible to find out, led the way across the street. So he's something about him is very intriguing, and he captures your attention. Determined if possible to find out, led the way across the street under pretense of wanting something in an opposite shop, and fortunately had just gained the pavement when the two gentlemen, turning back, had reached the same spot. Mr. Denny addressed them directly and entreated permission to introduce his friend, Mr. Wickham. Circle that name. Mr. Wickham is going to be a major character. Who had returned with him the day before from town, and he was happy to say he had accepted a commission in their corps. This was exactly as it should be, for the young man wanted only regimentals to make him completely charming. His appearance was greatly in his favor. He had all the best part of beauty, a fine countenance, a good figure, so he looks good in his face and his body, and very pleasing address, and he's well spoken. The introduction was followed up on his side by a happy readiness of conversation, a readiness at the same time perfectly correct and unassuming. He had really good social skills. And the whole party were still standing and talking together very agreeably when the sound of horses drew their notice, and Darcy and Bingley were seen riding down the street. On distinguishing the ladies of the group, the two gentlemen came directly towards them and began the usual civilities, like came up to talk. Bingley was the principal spokesman, and Miss Bennet the principal object, so Bingley and Jane. He was then, he said, on his way to Longbourn on purpose to inquire after her. Mr. Darcy corroborated it with a bow, and was beginning to determine not to fix his eyes on Elizabeth when they were suddenly arrested by the sight of the stranger. And Elizabeth, happening to see the countenance of both as they looked at each other, was all astonishment at the effect of the meeting. So the two men have approached the two older Bennets, and they're greeting them, they're talking, when their eyes catch Wickham, and you can see their face like change, like, who, what is he doing here? And she notices, ooh, something's wrong, something's up with this. Both changed color. One looked white and the other red, one pale, like with shock, and one red with anger. Mr. Wickham, after a few moments, touched his hat, a salutation which Mr. Darcy just deigned, just barely returned. What could be the meaning of it? It was impossible to imagine. It was impossible not to long to know. She's curious. In another minute, Mr. Bingley, but without seeming to have noticed what passed, took leave and rode on with his friend. In another minute, oh, I read that. Mr. Denny and Mr. Wickham walked with the young ladies to the door of Mr. Phillip's house, and then made their bows, in spite of Miss Lydia's pressing entreaties that they would come in, and even in spite of Mrs. Phillips throwing up the parlor window and loudly seconding the invitation. Come on, come with us, but they said no. Mrs. Phillips was always glad to see her nieces, and the two eldest, from their recent absence, were particularly welcome. She was eagerly expressing her surprise at their sudden return home, which, as their own carriage had not fetched them, she should have known nothing about if she had not happened to see Mr. Jones's shop boy in the street, who had told her that they were not to send any more drafts to Netherfield because the Miss Bennets were come away, when her civility was claimed towards Mr. Collins by Jane's introduction of him. She received him with her very best of politeness, which she returned with as much more, apologizing for his intrusion without any previous acquaintance with her, which he could not help flattering himself, however, might be justified by his relationship to the young ladies who introduced him to her notice. Mrs. Phillips was quite awed by such an excess of good breeding, but her contemplation of one stranger was soon put an end to by exclamations and inquiries about the other, of whom, however, she could not tell her nieces what they already knew, that Mr. Denny had brought him from London, and that he was to have a lieutenant's commission in the shire, in the blank shire. It didn't tell us what. This was a trip. Hey, Crescent, it's good to see you. Vincent Lynn, hello. One of the tricks, and I don't know if you can see it because it's small print. So it's here in the book, and it's indicating that we don't know what's the name of this shire, of this town. So it's like Williamsburg, and so they would take out the Williamsburg because there's many Fredericksburg and other burg cities. And it's a way of keeping the anonymity and make the reader think, oh, is this real? Is this a true story? Are these based on real characters? Or also because they're smaller towns back then, and people would say, this isn't true. And it breaks that fourth wall in theater. The fourth wall is the reality of it. So it's just a way to kind of keep the literature seem more believable. She had been watching him the last hour, she said, as he walked up and down the street, and had Mr. Wickham appeared, Kitty and Lydia would certainly have continued the occupation. But unluckily, no one passed the windows now, except for a few of the officers, who, in comparison with the stranger, were become stupid, disagreeable fellows. So now nobody was as handsome or as interesting as Mr. Wickham. Some of them were to dine with the Phillipses the next day, and their aunt promised to make her husband call on Mr. Wickham and give him an invitation also, if the family from Longbourn would come in the evening. This was agreed to, and Mrs. Phillips protested that they would have a nice, comfortable, nosy game of lottery tickets and a little bit of hot supper afterwards. The prospect of such delights was very cheering, and they parted in mutual good spirits. Mr. Collins repeated his apologies in quitting the room, and was assured with unwearying civility that they were perfectly needless. As they walked home, Elizabeth related to Jane what she had seen pass between the two gentlemen, but though Jane would have defended either or both had they appeared to be wrong, she could no more explain such behavior than her sister. Mr. Collins, on his return, highly gratified by Mrs. Bennet, by admiring Mrs. Phillips's manners and politeness, he protested that, except Lady Catherine and her daughter, he had never seen a more elegant woman, for she had not only received him with the utmost civility, but had even pointedly included him in her invitation for the next evening, although utterly unknown to her before. Something he supposed might be attributed to his connection with them, the Bennets, but yet he had never met with so much attention in the whole course of his life. And I'm going to stop there because I have some other things I want to talk about. So the rising action has begun. We were about to get into our conflict. We know something's up by the way Darcy and Bingley respond to this new main character, Wickham. We know that a secondary character, Mr. Collins, is ingratiating himself in. We know that the young girls are really flirtatious, except for Mary, with all the military, and they're particularly taken with Mr. Wickham. We know that Elizabeth, who's quick to notice everything, has noticed that there's some kind of conflict between Wickham and, or certainly Wickham didn't look like anything was amiss, but there was some shock on the faces of Bingley and Darcy in encountering Wickham. So we get, as they say, the plot thickens. We get to see some shifts. Okay, speaking of shifts, I want to shift to some other directions because I have three purposes in my channel. One was help build reading comprehension for language learners, and that not language learners, that's not right. In reading comprehension for native speakers who struggle with reading comprehension. It's turned out there's been a secondary level to what my reading has done, and I've got a lot of AP students, and that's going to bring me to the third point. So the second point of my reading has seemed to serve, I've drawn a lot of English second language learners, and I am a certified English second language learner teacher. So I wanted to share some text for both those other categories, just reading for the comprehension of the story, then reading as ESL. So depending on what your needs are, most of you that are here are probably academic ESL. You're looking to perform well by studying in English. But many people just want to master speech and conversation. This book, Easy True Stories, I've bought it recently, so I assume it's still out there. It's a Longman publication, and it is a series. The way it works is the native speaker, and it's all visuals, shows this part of the story and then reads the story. And as I, the native reader, would read the story to you, you would see the pictures that associate with the part of the story. Then when you come back to it, thank you, Adrienne. Hi, Catalina. When you come back to it's your turn, then the English learner's turn, then you use the cartoon pictures to retell the story. You don't read it. Now you can if you're in intermediate. This is really for intermediate to advanced readers or learners. Catalina, I love that book, A Thousand Splendid Suns. So I'm glad you read it. So for the intermediate, what it does is it makes you recall and try and tell the story in a conversational tone. Then when you do that, the book has really basic questions that might seem too simplistic. You may say, oh, I'm an advanced reader, but it really challenges at every level because it makes you have to think and recall what words or what circumstances, what comprehension. It's really a great builder of that. This one is a really pretty basic level, but there are easy true stories at different levels. But you can do this with magazine articles. It's just a great technique. So if you're working with an English tutor and you're tired of grammar, you're tired of just doing the non-conversational work, you're tired of trying to come up with conversations, this is a really great tool. I encourage you guys to use it. Farid, welcome. We miss you over in Discord. Come chat. Now, my second area that I want to focus on, and I posted this in Discord today. This is a great tool for those of you who are preparing for SAT or ACT. I have a lot of AP and IB and honor students that read along. Farid, we just finished chapter 15 and I finished at page 70. So next read will be page 70. So, Faith, I'm so glad to hear that. I love that book too. All right, so this is Writers Inc. Daily Language Workouts. And it's a really good, if you're trying to get ready for SAT and ACT, the number one thing you can do, Fatine, thank you, Fatine. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm glad you're here. What you can do, the best thing you can do is read. And that's why this read along, I think, has helped, because it helps you read, see the words, see the fluency, see the words in context. This is more about the grammar part of SAT or ACT. And it's got multiple parts, but they have daily sentences. So the first page is mistakes, and it tells you what the mistakes are going to be. Commas, unnecessary commas, spelling mistakes, and other comma mistakes. So you can review those areas in any of the good grammar primers, go to the chapter and look at those sections. And then the question will have, and the first one always shows you, typewriters originally designed as writing machines for the blind became popular in the business world in the 1880s and created many new jobs for women. So it's telling you, okay, originally it's misspelled. So you cross it through and put the correct spelling. Blind needs to insert a comma. And 1880s needs to eliminate a comma. So it's an unnecessary comma. So you go through all of those and correct them. And then I'll post the page on Discord. And tomorrow I'll post the answers. Ooh, screenshot. You could cheat. No cheating. It's a really great way to build your ability to recognize mistakes. It's one of the best tools I've seen in preparing for SAT and ACT, because when you take the whole thing, you're building your muscle memory, which you need to do. But sometimes you really want to work on just the grammar. And the hard part about the grammar is you've got to recognize what the mistakes are. And you don't really learn grammar that way when you're learning it in class. So I think this is a great tool. Again, it is daily language workouts. I got this off Amazon. They've got it in multiple levels. Level 12 is, I think, the highest. I think it's equivalent, if I remember, to 12th grade. I used to have a 9th grade book, but I gave it away. So if you're a 9th grader and you don't want to be that advanced, you can go on Amazon, and I think they still have it, and you can get an easier level. If you're a very advanced ESL student and you're trying to prepare for studying in English, I would recommend this. I think it would be really frustrating and unnecessary for you to do if you're ESL and you're just trying to become conversant. Rex Destroyer, been reading along, and then there were none. Good. Chapter 14, now it's really good. Great. I'm glad that. Agatha Christie was one of my favorite reads when I was in middle school, and I know that it's still read in high school now. And I think it's good for critical reading, critical thinking skills, but she's not my favorite genre. Hello, Justina. So I hope some of these tips help. And if you want more tips like this, join us over on Discord. I will say again, I don't monetize, which means I don't make money for doing what I do. This is really just my nerdy hobby. I don't get to teach anymore. I used to be an English and history teacher. I worked in special education for learning disability and for autism and for English second language learners. I miss being in the classroom. Now I work for the Department of Education. Education is my heart and my passion. I do it because I love to do it. I love hearing from you guys from around the world and from all your different levels. I've had kids that come on and tell me They're second language learners. I've had kids come on and tell me they have ADHD and dyslexia. I've had kids tell me they're autistic. I've had kids tell me they're from all around the world. I've had mothers tell me that they read the work to be homework helpers now in time of COVID. I have kids tell me that their teachers don't have the swing of online learning yet. So this has just been a miraculous blessing to me, this channel that I started, I think, 4 or 5 years ago for my own classroom because they were trying to get out of doing their reading homework assignments. And I said, better way to do this. And it's kind of caught on. And guys, we are 15 away from 10,000. What blows my mind that there's that many people out there willing to subscribe to a channel devoted to reading. It makes me super happy. So come on over to Discord and we have channels on for ESL. You can do practice speaking channels. You can talk back and forth to me, practice your conversation. We have channels now for SAT and ACT prep. We have channels that discuss at further length Pride and Prejudice or other books that I've done readings on. We have channels about what's your favorite books to read. This morning we were talking about Bollywood and different movies that we enjoy. So let me just see what the other comments are. Justina, thank you. I'm glad. I hope guys, check out my playlist because there are, I think, 50 different titles, including short stories. And I know in high school we read a lot of short stories. So check out and see if there's any other books. We're going to be doing Animal Farm next. I've ordered it. It comes in Tuesday. It won go to my community section where I do polls. Now I'm asking, what do you think your schools do well? But the old poll was, what book do you want next? And Animal Farm won. Wasn't my first choice. So that's what I'll be reading next. Manaj says, easy to understand. You're talking about this one, Manaj, or are you talking about My English? Or are you talking about Easy True Stories? Sometimes I lose the thread of what you guys are telling me. And you're so welcome, Manaj. Fareed, I was an ESL student and I just finished last year. I have such a heart. Hey, Boobareem. I have such a heart for, we missed you over in Discord. I have such a heart for, or you might have been there this morning, weren't you? For ESL students, because I've lived overseas as a second language learner, and my administrative job when I taught was the ESL coordinator, and I saw the struggles that they went to. It's so different to learn a language just to be able to be a tourist and to learn the language to succeed in school. And I have such respect for you guys that do it. So congratulations to you, Fareed. Well, we'll read that when I finish Pride and Prejudice. So Pride and Prejudice is probably going to take me, sadly, another month. It takes me so long to read, but I'll probably read again tomorrow too. Well, good for you for not having time. I guess I'm a loser. I just sit on my phone all the time. I have too much time to chat. Boomerang, you were there earlier, and then good. I'm glad you went out with your family. That's important. And Fareed, I know how much time you have to devote. Are you still studying in English? And are you in university now? I know how hard it is, but if you ever need help, if you have questions, if you want me to review an assignment you've done, or if you have questions about the English grammar structure, though grammar is not my strength, you can Instagram me at Best Tutor Friend, or you can join on Discord and ask questions there. I'm really, really happy to help with that. So there we're past our 30 minutes. I only read one chapter today. Guys, I'm excited. We're probably going to be breaking 10,000 soon. So subscribe if you haven't already, and keep reading and enjoy your Saturday. Don't forget, Fareed, I'm saying this to you, and I'm saying it to all of you. Don't forget to take care of yourselves. Take some time to relax, to laugh, to spend time with your families, to reach out to your families if you're living overseas away from your families, to take a walk, to do some exercise, to do some stretching, to eat well, to hydrate, to drink some tea. Just laugh and be happy for a little bit, because as we talked about in Discord, watching the movie Up, we only get this one chance to do it well. So live well, read well, and I will read to you next time. See ya.